Hello and welcome back to another video of the document deep dive series. This time we're still looking at the Battle of Krzeszów, or Krzeszów, how we call it, because that's easier to pronounce. Now, this is the situation as we left it off last time at the end of the 24th of July. However, before we just carry on, we need to talk about some things because some stuff has come up that has cast doubt, let's put it that way, on some of those documents. I mean, they're obviously original, but I think the Germans might have lied in them. They might have misrepresented the situation to their superiors, which makes the story actually even more interesting than I thought it originally was. To show you what I mean, I will just recap the end of the last video. So at the end of the 24th, the Germans reported the following enemy losses. They said there was one T-34 tank that was destroyed by a PAC, one armored car heavily damaged. They claimed to have destroyed two anti-tank guns and one self-propelled gun, which was hit by airplanes, and also two machine guns. And they claim that they themselves suffered 1 killed, 19 wounded, and 4 missing. Now, generally speaking, when you research these kind of documents, you assume that loss reports are probably fairly accurate. Now, the reports of how much enemy equipment or personnel was destroyed, not necessarily. So, they claimed at the end of the 24th, they counted 158 enemy dead, and estimated 200 more from airstrikes and so on. Quite the heavy and desperate battle, right? Well, as I often do, I asked, or well, rather he did it on his own accord, Radio Smash looked into the Russian documents. So let's see. First of all, this is a Russian situation map showing this battle, and if we zoom in, we see Krzeszów here. It's a bit blurry from the website, and you can see the 71st Rifle Division attacking the town. So that was the enemy force, which was never mentioned in the German documents, which indicates that they maybe didn't take prisoners in order to ascertain this, or didn't capture the necessary documents. Which would be weird if you had 158 counted dead lying between your trenches, but okay. So we know that we have to look into the 71st Rifle Division here. The 71st Rifle Division at that time was part of 13th Army. Now 13th Army provides this air recon photo, but also a short description of the general German defenses, which is quite interesting in order for us to get a better picture. So the enemy defense line on the western bank of the Sun River on the sector Krzeszów-Yaroslav consisted of intermittent trenches and individual rifle and machine gun emplacements. Krzeszów, the enemy fortified most strongly, adapted individual houses for defense, began digging an anti-tank ditch on the eastern side, and in some places installed wire obstacles. This is the anti-tank ditch has been heavily featured, of course, on my reconstruction as well, and here you can see an actual photograph from the air. So this is where my mouse is going, where the anti-tank ditch can be seen, just going through the fields there. I keep on reading from the Russian report. The enemy defense in the Krzeszów area was built to cover the bridge and approaches to the Sun River. Krzeszów was surrounded by an anti-tank ditch, turning in places into escarpments with triangular cross-section up to 3 meters deep. In the southeastern part of Krzeszów, the ditch was only laid out. The faces of the anti-tank ditch approach the Sun River. The fire system was built based on a dense arrangement of universal pillboxes. This apparently, according to Radio Smash, means basically log bunkers covered in earth, complete type rifle pits, artillery and mortar positions. According to local residents who worked on this line, the enemy intended to connect the entire fire system, pits, bunkers, firing positions and observation posts, with trenches, but the task was not completed. There are no trenches, except the anti-tank ditch is kind of a trench, I guess. Now, what's interesting here is that they claim that the southeastern part was not finished. And this is also something that the German documents show, and that I put on my map here. You can see the anti-tank ditch going across here. The one area we just looked at was cut out here, just turned around a bit. So this basic area here. And down here in the southeastern area, the position was not finished. What I find interesting, and this will be important for later, is that the unit Kettenbeil was actually positioned where there was no anti-tank ditch. Interesting. This is the Russian after-action report of the 71st Rifle Division, which Radio Smersh found. You can see here the 24th of July and then the 25th of July down here, which will be the subject of the second part of this video. Let's look at the 24th of July to see how it fits with the German report. Task on the 24th of July 1944. To seize the enemy's strong point Kreshow, force the river San and capture bridgeheads on the west bank. The units of the division were fighting for control of Kreshow and the bridgeheads on the west bank of the river San, north and south of Kreshow. The enemy offered stubborn resistance, conducting strong artillery, mortar and rifle machine gun fire. His aviation bombs and shells the battle formations and the rear of the division. We heard about that. They called in the air support Stukas and Dorados. By 1800, on the 24th of July 1944, the units held the line. 126th Rifle Regiment, the Grove north of Bieliny south outskirts of Bukovina. 131st Rifle Regiment northeast and southeast of Kreshow, so we know that it was the 131st Rifle Regiment here. 367th Rifle Regiment, Lazov, Grove west of Kurilovka, Kulno. 2 companies of the 367th Rifle Regiment and a penal company forced the river San in the area of elevation 167.0, 2 kilometers west of Lazov. I wonder if these were the forces that pushed back the 5th Company and the 7th New Company of the Field Training Regiment. The division HQ was in Novavis. And now it gets interesting. It says here the losses for the 23rd of July, 8 KIA and 16 wounded in action. Captured 175mm gun, destroyed up to a company of the enemy 6 machine guns. So on the 23rd, apparently the losses relatively small. However, obviously the Germans claimed 158 killed on the 24th, so if we go one further, for the 25th, the losses are the ones for the 24th, right? Well, it says here, losses killed 19 men and wounded 59 men. So that's quite a bit away from the 158 claimed surely destroyed. And I can also spoil a bit, that's not on this document here, but a bit further, that later there were also not that heavy losses. So the Germans certainly exaggerated these losses quite a bit. You may also have noticed that there are no mentioned tank losses, and the interesting thing is Radio Smash looked quite a bit, and it seems like they did not have tanks at all. In fact, there's another document from the 13th Army reporting about this operation, and they write the following. In this operation, the army had almost no tanks of its own. Lieutenant General Baranov's cavalry mechanized group merely coordinated its actions in the army's offensive zone. The 87th Separate Tank Regiment, which participated in the battles to break through the enemy's defense, used its tanks as infantry support tanks. And we looked it up. This Separate Tank Regiment was nowhere near this area. There was an assault gun unit with ISU 152s. Also far, far away from this area. So it seems like these tanks may well have been either imaginary or made up, possibly in order to exaggerate the pressure on this bridgehead in light of later developments. Next up, we also looked at different German units that were involved here, because there was some questions in the comments about that, namely regarding the Luftwaffe unit. So the unit Kettenbeil, which held this part of Kreshow down here, which was a security unit, probably came from either the 992nd or 996th Sicherungs- or Security Battalion. And a part of that unit was apparently Russians, because the Russians in their document mentioned having captured 6 Russians from one of these units. Now, the Luftwaffe unit was actually, we were able to identify that it's from Flak Artillerieschule 40, which means a Flak Artillery School. So also training troops. Here are just Luftwaffe training troops at this point. So they were not normal Luftwaffe Field Division soldiers, but Flak crews, basically, and not even finished ones. Anyway, with these new details out of the way, we will continue reading the German after-action report, this time for the 25th of July 1944, 30 hours. The Luftwaffe company, the Flak company, arrives and is deployed together with platoon Westermann from Unit Kettenball under the command of Captain Kettenball at the southern edge of the town. The right flank rests on the San River, the left flank connects with the refused bent-back flanks of the 7th Company. We can see that here in the reconstruction. Captain Kettenball received the order to advance with this composite unit and recapture the former main line of resistance, which runs through the center of the village of Kreshow-Dolny. So there was supposed to be a counterattack here. As the unit shows little fighting spirit, the plan fails. Again, they're kind of disrespecting this unit here. It's being put into this most vulnerable sector, which doesn't have a finished anti-tank ditch, and I mean, obviously these were old men from the Sicherungsunit and Luftwaffe recruits, but I'm getting, and you will probably get the same impression, I'm getting the impression that there's a lot of blame being shoveled onto this unit for how this battle went, which together with the exaggerated enemy strength and the invented tanks gives you a good idea that maybe there were recriminations later. Anyway, at dawn, the new 7th Company comes under heavy pressure from the enemy, who is repelled in close combat. And just to remind you, the 7th New Company was down here, where the enemy had crossed the San River. The report goes on. A new enemy assembly is observed in Kreshow-Dolny. Likewise, the enemy is bringing up stronger forces into the wooded area 300 meters north of Kostrava, where 12 tanks are gathering. Again, these tanks did not exist. The battalion commander realizes that the heavily battered bridgehead can no longer withstand such an attack and, on his own initiative, once again contacts Colonel Dorn to request air support. So it seems like they requested air support on the basis of there being tanks, which might explain why they invented them. 10:20 hours. Just as the enemy begins the assault, 12 Stukas appear and shatter the enemy's spearheads and assembly areas. The enemy's confusion is exploited by the battalion commander, who orders a counterattack from the three strongpoints, hedgehog positions of the bridgehead. Under concentrated fire from the heavy weapons, in which Lieutenant Frille and Lieutenant Grambo particularly distinguish themselves through outstanding cooperation, the gaps in the front are successfully closed, restoring the bridgehead as a unified whole. That doesn't mean that they pushed them back out of this area here, just that they eliminated infiltrators within Kreshow. Then, at 1800 hours, the garrison of the bridgehead receives the following order. Due to heavy enemy pressure from the south, the position in the bridgehead can no longer be held and will be evacuated on the regiment's orders. The start of the withdrawal will be signaled from the battalion command post by signal flares, green star cluster. Upon these signals, the 6th and 7th companies will, in groups and under heavy covering fire to deceive the enemy, disengage and withdraw across the bridge. Rally point, eastern edge, Kopki. There the companies will receive new orders for employment. Unit Kettenball will secure the bridge until the last men of 6th and 7th companies have been withdrawn. After the last man has left the bridgehead, it will also withdraw across the bridge to Kopki. Captain Kettenball will be the last to cross the bridge and will report to Lieutenant Otto, who has been tasked with demolishing the bridge, that once the last man has cleared the bridgehead. If any unforeseen events occur, the battalion commander will give Lieutenant Otto the order to demolish the bridge by a red star cluster signal. In addition, Lieutenant Otto is generally ordered that, should breakthrough tank forces or motorized infantry take the bridge by storm and be on the demolition site, he is to detonate. This order came because the situation in the south had further deteriorated, with the 7th New Company being pushed back to the height of Guzebo here, and the Russians pushing further into the flank. So it made sense to evacuate the bridgehead. So this is the situation on the morning of the 25th, or the first half of the 25th, with the Russians still encircling Kreshow and the Germans still holding it. What I find interesting here is that this evacuation plan again hinges on the unit Kettenball, which apparently has little spirit, as the AAR reminded us earlier. So they have to hold out until the last moment while the 6th and 7th companies are being ferried across, or rather are running across the bridge. So that is the plan during the night, and that's where we will pick up next, and it will also explain why the Germans try to paint themselves in such a desperate picture here in the AAR. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching and have a nice day.